So, okay. Great. Well, thanks everyone. Welcome to the Thursday, March 24th, 2022 meeting of the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Commission. We will start with roll call. Damien, if you could help us out with that, please.
You got it. Kathleen Taylor, absent. Kate Nelson,
Here.
Kyle West,
Here.
Larry Chesney, absent for now. Mark Johnson,
Here.
Peter Gower,
Here.
Sarah Chvilicek,
Here.
Scott Carey,
Present.
and Shelley Reed.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'll ask everybody to please rise if you're able. Salute to the flag, and I'll ask Commissioner Chvilicek to lead us this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. Looking for a motion on that.
Move to approve.
I think you have a motion for approval.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I think I have a motion for Commissioner Chvilicek and a second for Commissioner West. Any additional comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item on our agenda is public comment. I would ask our clerk to maybe read in the public comment process for us, seeing nobody here in the audience, so.
Yes. Yeah,
Thank
I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick to give folks the idea of what to do if they want to give digital public comment. 1 second here. Here we go. All right. So obviously in person, we have public comment cards to fill out. And if you're joining via Zoom and want to do public comment on an item, you just go to tmrpa.org and you'll see right on our main page here, all in red, click to access a digital public comment card. You will then go through and fill out your name and email, the agenda item you would like to speak on. If you're going to be doing it by video or phone, and then provide your phone number just in case there's some issues. And then once you do this, it will provide you with the landing page with the Zoom information, as well as an email. And we will also be informed of when someone fills this out. And then if you want to speak on another item, you have to go through this whole process again. Just go to the home page, fill out another digital public comment card, and we'll just take comments in the order that we receive them. Simple as that. And with that, there is no public comment.
Okay, thank you. That answered my next question. All right. Seeing no one here, I will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for approval of the minutes from the February 24th Regional Planning Commission meeting.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gower, I'll move to approve those minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. I have a motion. A second.
I'll second Commissioner Chvilicek.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Chvilicek. I have a motion from Commissioner Gower, second from Commissioner Chvilicek. Any additional comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries unanimously. Okay, for next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. And I will ask if there, for anybody in the public or anybody on this board that would wish to pull anything from the consent agenda? If not, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner West. I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda. Looking for a second.
Commissioner, I will second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. I have a motion for approval and a second. Any additional comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Approval of the consent agenda. Great. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to business of the day. Item number 7, the possible action, the Natural Resources Plan, data synthesis and update on progress to date and next steps. Commissioner or Director Smith, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Smith for the record. We're just going to do part 2 of our update about the natural resources planning effort. Nate Kusha is going to take us through a brief presentation, and then we have representatives from the consultant that we hired, Cardno, Julia Beals, and Patricia Sussman, to take us through a lot of the work they've been doing and bring us up to speed on that organization. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Nate Kusha.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. As Jeremy said, we're going to go over kind of what we've been doing for the NR plan. So I'm going to have a brief presentation, introduction, talking about kind of the engagement we've done thus far, and then I'll toss it to Julia and Trish at Cardno to go over the data gathering process and what they've done there. So with that, we have released the first in a series of surveys that we plan to release. This first survey asks participants to kind of rank the 6 category areas for the natural resources plan that we've come up with, as well as to identify what they love most and what concerns them most about the natural resources in our region. To date, we have 305 total responses. And it's been up for a little over a week, maybe a week and a half or so. So we love the participation there. If you guys haven't taken it yet, please go to our Natural Resources Plan website and go ahead and take that. I'm going to go ahead and show you a word cloud we've made of the question of what do you love most about natural resources in our region. As you can see, things that kind of popped up a lot were access to our natural resources in our outdoor areas, trails, the Truckee River, open spaces, etc. So yet again, this is just preliminary. The survey will be open through the end of the month, so we'll have more results at that time. So last time we met, we introduced you guys to the 6 categories for the Natural Resources Plan, which you can see on the infographic here. We created this infographic to really help inform our survey participants, as well as just the general public, about the categories. And the infographic so far, we have kind of 2 examples for each of the categories. We plan to further refine this infographic to really give more of an explanation of each of the categories as well. As you can see, it's already changed a little bit from what you guys have in your packet, just visually, but we're going to be creating more detailed explanations. And these are the categories that we're really going to organize the Natural Resources Plan website by. So we'll have different sections for the physical resources, biological resources, et cetera, as well as the chapters in the Natural Resources Plan document itself. So moving on, along with kind of that general public engagement efforts that we've done since the last time we've met, we're going to be meeting with our Natural Resources Plan Steering Committee on March 31st, really to discuss the kind of process so far, review that, and then the next steps going forward, and get the steering committee's kind of input and take on how we should progress from what we've set. Additionally, we're setting the 6 category subcommittees, beginning to form those. I reached out to all of you guys, and we do have at least one planning commissioner on each one of those subcommittees. So that's great. We look forward to you guys participating. And we're reaching out to the other organizations currently. We have responses from some of them. We hope to meet with the first 2 of those groups, which will be the physical resources group, as well as the outdoor recreation subcommittee. Hope to do those in the next couple weeks, followed by the others after that. So with that, that's just a brief overview of the engagement. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Trish and Julia from Cardno to walk you through the engagement process and what they've done on that and where we're at.
Awesome. Thank you, Nate. Okay, I'm a Teams person, so bear with me. I think this should work. Okay, can you all see the slideshow?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so yeah, I'm just gonna kind of jump right into it. The purpose and agenda of this presentation, basically just to provide you all with a synthesis of progress to date, 3 items that we're going to touch on briefly, where we've been and where we're going, a pretty high level summary of the data collection findings that are provided in that memo, and we'll follow up with a discussion of next steps. Okay, so this memo is included in this diagram is included in the memo. So we began this process with the outreach to the partners and stakeholders that TMRPA had identified. And that outreach began on November 10th, and we concluded that process at the beginning of this month. And overall, we reached out to 70 different entities. Kind of simultaneously throughout that process, we were capturing the data that was provided by some of those agencies and organizations, and typically through an Excel spreadsheet where we would describe the data set name, description of the data set, the date of the last update, frequency of updates, and some general information like that. And our methodology throughout this process is also described in that memo. Okay, so the next 5 slides are just going to highlight some of those key findings from the memo. And again, the purpose of the memo is just to discuss kind of the big outreach phase and what we had found, and also highlight what the next steps will be. And this is, again, just a real condensed summary of that memo. So one of the things that we looked at in the memo were response rates. So out of the 70 entities that we reached out to, 39 of them responded, which was an overall response rate of 59%. And, out of those 39 respondents, we took a look at just entity type, and that's what's shown in the figure on the slide. Out of the 39 respondents, 27 of those entities actually contributed some data to the project. So some other items that we looked at, data type. So we kept the data type real simple and just divided it between spatial data versus qualitative data. And spatial data was typically GIS data, shapefiles, but also included kind of tabular data. So air quality, water quality, and that kind of more quantitative data like that. And as you can see on the figure on the left, the vast majority of the data providers were more spatial in nature. We also at the accessibility of the data that was provided. So one of TMRPA's goals from the beginning was to serve as like a pass-through rather than hosting that data themselves. So we thought it was important to identify, for the data providers, if all of their data was online, if some of it was online, but some of it wasn't, or if none of their data was online, and that might be something that TMRPA would have to host. So in that Venn diagram, there were 25 out of the 27 that had at least some of their data online. And we took a closer look at this. And out of those 25 entities, 17 of them had some kind of central data portal. And we thought this was important to look at also because it will ultimately inform how the data from these organizations will translate to TMRPA's natural resource library in terms of like how it will be linked. And if there's one central place, then that makes it kind of easy to link that data versus when it's spread across a bunch of different URLs. And in particular, we looked at the ArcGIS Open Data platform for 2 reasons. A, TMRPA has a license for it, and B, it seems that it's an increasingly popular platform. We found that it was really easy to use, very intuitive, allows for users to download layers, view maps, etc. Okay, so in the memo, we also looked at just the kind of bulk of the data sets. Real preliminary, but overall, we found that there were approximately 289 data sets that were provided. So in the memo, we looked at the data providers in terms of how much data they provided. So the high volume data providers are on the column to the left, and they provided greater than 10 data sets. Medium volume, they provided 4 to 10 data sets, and the low volume data providers provided less than 4. And lastly, in addition to kind of breaking up the data providers by how much data they, the volume of data that they provided, we also looked at that bulk of the 289 data sets in terms of which entity type contributed the bulk of that data. And we found that state agencies provided the largest volume of data, followed by federal agencies. And local agencies were the next biggest share, followed by research organizations, and finally, nonprofit organizations provided the least volume of data. Okay, so with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Trish to discuss what is coming next.
Thanks, Julia. And if you don't mind, just I'll cue you to keep we do the slides. Okay, yeah. So next steps are we've collected all that data, and Julia said 289 data sets, and for each of the 27 organizations that provided data, we gather that data, and all of it is indexed. Each organization has its own separate spreadsheet where we captured what they had. And so our next step is to compile all of the spreadsheets into one master spreadsheet. And we worked with TMRPA to kind of pilot some spreadsheets and figure out like what that master spreadsheet would look like, with the intention that it will serve as a way to organize and sort and analyze data, and also knowing that it will help serve as the back end to the data portal that Nate talked a bit about at the intro to this presentation. So this slide is about some of the goals we established when thinking about how to organize and compile that data. We wanted to be able to, have it all in one place in order to sort it and categorize it and analyze it and cut and slice it in different ways. And we also, kind of thought about like how to organize it. As you can imagine, data comes in all sorts of forms, even though most of it is spatial data, some of it's in layers and points and databases and data sets. And we leaned on cataloging the data as it was generally provided to us, which is most commonly in data sets. And that was one, because somebody already went through the effort of compiling, organizing data in a way that made sense. And we wanted to lean on that and not recreate the wheel. And then and then thought like, this made that number that we threw out there, 289 data sets, may change a little bit as we repopulate that master spreadsheet and think about how else we might categorize data. But generally, that's kind of the breadth of the total data provided, and it's in a format we think that can be translated into that web portal. Okay, next slide. This is just not that you need to read this. The same table is on page 10 of the memo. I think it's in your packet. But right now, the master spreadsheet has these columns, and within these columns, there's several that are delimited lists that include the 6 natural resource categories that Nate had introduced earlier. So that's one of the ways we can split and slice the data, and then we introduced some other ways to water by whether it's water quality or water quantity or air quality, or whether it's statewide or relates to wildlife or large mammals, or lots of other different categories, so that with the intention that we can really start to look at where is there overlap, where are there gaps, how much water quality data is there. There's a lot of water quality data, I can say already. Okay, next slide. So Julia looked at this diagram earlier. This has just been helpful for us to kind of picture where we're headed. I think we've done a lot of the key work, which was just an enormous amount of outreach and a lot of really interesting and productive conversations, and got to know a lot of stakeholders. Julia did most of this outreach, but can say that on the whole, people were really gracious and happy to participate in this effort. And so we've captured that, checked those boxes, and we're in that progress phase of populating this master spreadsheet that I was just talking about. And where that's headed, once that's completed, is into the web portal that TMRPA is working on building. And then for our part, it's just to analyze that data and figure out what are the most interesting things it's telling us, especially from a natural resource planning perspective. And we have our part of our GIS team to help us with that analysis, and we're ready to create some maps and look at how some of those data sets look as a composite together. Okay, next slide. Okay, and this slide is really very conceptual, meant to be nothing more than a concept. But if you can kind of picture that those 6 natural resource categories that I think you're all familiar with on the top, and just if you imagine each one of these little boxes underneath is some data set that one of the 27 organizations has. There's lots of ways to kind of like fit those data sets into different boxes. And so you'll notice, for instance, the Nevada division of Nevada Department of Wildlife has physical data, biological data, they have outdoor recreation data. So there's a lot of different data sets that may fit into different categories. And the colors here, and again, this is conceptual. It doesn't necessarily include every organization, but for the most part, everything in gray would be organizations that have an existing online accessible data portal that TMRPA can provide a static link to. And then the kind of like greenish, yellowish color, those are data sets that aren't online that TMRPA would actually have to upload to its server and then make sure that they are keeping track of and updating as time goes on because they're not accessible elsewhere. Okay, and I think you can move to our question slide. If you have questions for us, we're happy to talk more right now, and also welcome to follow up with us later. And also just want to say it's been a super interesting project to work on. So thanks for the opportunity, and we look forward to figuring out what we've collected and what it's going to tell us next.
So I think that's all we have from our end. So I just want to go ahead and open it up to you guys on the commission. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever it may be, on the natural resources project, whether it's the data gathering or the engagement, feel free to ask away and we'll answer, hopefully.
Great. Thanks, Nate, Julia, Patricia. We appreciate that. Commissioners, do we have any questions? That was a lot of data. So Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the update. Very excited to see this project moving forward. I was curious in terms of the data collection. One area of particular concern or of interest that I have is the cultural resources and historic resources subgroup. I was curious, looking at the slide that you shared, it didn't look like we had any of the Native American tribes, the local tribes here listed. And then I was curious, what, in terms of data collection and in the process so far, what's been the involvement with our tribal neighbors?
So, Jeremy, you might actually want to speak to that one, or Nate. I think TMRPA had tried to handle the outreach with the tribes, but we did get contact with SHPO, and I think that's kind of like a black box where it's just really sensitive data that it's difficult to be made public. But yeah, in terms of the tribes, if I don't know, Nate or Jeremy.
Yeah, this is Jeremy for the record. I'm happy to speak on that one. I think the reference to SHPO is great as well. And it could be that we just have a link to the organization if people are searching for that kind of data, and you have to inquire with them to find, specifically what they're willing to share. In terms of the tribal governments, we have reached out. I'm still trying to get in touch with folks at the Pyramid Lake Tribe and get them engaged in this project. But I have been successful in contacting folks at the Reno Sparks Indian Colony. We had a good meeting. We talked about engagement and the subcommittee on cultural and historical resources. And my understanding is that they'll want to participate in that. So I think, at least at this point, Reno Sparks Indian Colony will be joining us for that conversation on that topic. And we're going to keep trying. I mean, we approached 70 different entities. That, even in and of itself, is not the entire universe of entities we should be approaching. This is a living document, and we're hoping to, as we go, be able to add to this. So entities and organizations that haven't responded, we're not done with trying, to get a hold of them. And then hopefully we'll be able to recognize other organizations that have the potential to contribute and get them on board too. Even if it's years down the line, I mean, I don't know, we want to keep this natural resource paradigm in place as the way that we can address these concerns in the region and continuously use this product and portal and plan, to really continue the conversation as things change, as we learn new stuff. and to help us enhance our policy. So we're gonna keep on it. We have made some progress.
Thank you for that. Mr. Chair, a follow-up, if I may? Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the explanation. I think that the tribes are going to be a key partner in the development of this plan and then moving forward as well, too, with the policy. So I'm very happy to hear that. I was curious, maybe this one's more directed to the team. What kind of level of engagement, what's kind of the timeline moving forward with the responsibilities of these agencies that have submitted data? What's kind of the expectation of them moving forward and with the development of this plan? And
I think I'll jump in here, May. I think as far as data providing, most of these entities have a data portal or a set up data set on their own website. So our involvement with them from a data perspective would just be to kind of keep in touch as we move forward with their data and make sure that we know when they're updating their data so that we can then have the most current data for our maps and things, anything we make for that. But otherwise, we'll be linking to their data. So will just be, I think Trish mentioned, kind of a pass through to these entities' data. From a maybe policy perspective of those, most of these entities we're going to be reaching out to in one way or another. Many of them will be participating on our category subcommittees, helping to kind of craft the narratives for these different topic area pieces, as well as hopefully help us come up with some policy implications for future policy update in the regional plan update 2024. Otherwise, there'll be just general stakeholders that we'll be reaching out to get input, whether it be at any of our public forums that we're going to be hosting or survey engagement, whatever it may be. Does that answer your question, Scott?
sure does. Thanks a lot. Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Carey. Commissioners, any additional questions? Commissioner Gower?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions, I guess, as a follow-up to Jeremy, some of the comments that you made, understanding that this is kind of an ongoing effort, living document. Are there, of the entities, and I'm looking at the list here, that did not provide a response, are there any particular entities that you are targeting that you think may have data that you're, keen on pursuing in the near term?
Jeremy Smith, the record. Great question. I think I don't know off the top of my head exactly. I don't have a list of target. I mean, we're going to try again with all of them. I think it's interesting. Some of the stuff is nebulous and hard to get to. And I guess I've had more sort of conversational interactions with folks at DRI, at the university, especially around climate change. There's so much data out there about that and really trying to understand how we can bring something meaningful to the table. So that's an area that I'm, have been actively engaged in those conversations and will continue down that path. But sort of off the top of my head, no, I don't have from that list of missing entities any sort of hot prospects, but it will be all of them. I mean, I think we'll continue to try to reach out to everyone we've identified until they give us a hard no, get out of my face. And then maybe even then, we might pester them again. But I'll take a look at that, Peter, and have a better answer for you next time.
That sounds good. I appreciate the response. And I guess the follow-up that I have, and since you brought it up, mentioning the climate change data, I'm noticing that of the 70 entities that you have coordinated with, I mean, most of them appear to be, local. Some of them are federal agencies, but I'm, assuming that you're coordinating with the local contact. And, there are data points that are, outside of our region, particularly, and when you're thinking about climate change, that would apply to, how we manage our natural resources in our region. So something that I brought up before, and I know you're tracking it, but I just thought I'd take the opportunity to reiterate it, that, I really do think it is important that we kind of look outside of our this list and think about other entities, NASA, for example, that may have data that would be relevant to our region, organizations like that. Thank you.
Patricia, did you have something? I see your hand raised on the Zoom call.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide a little more information about the outreach methodology to give a sense of like how intensive or not intensive, I guess, depending on your perspective, the outreach was. So most organizations received 3 touches. So an introductory email from TMRPA, and then up to 3 follow-up emails from Julia or I. And for some organizations, which we had worked with Team RPA to identify as like, definitely we think these organizations may have data. Often they also received a phone call. We did, it wasn't just like a one email out to, a large group. There was a concerted effort to really track that and to continue to follow up with organizations that hadn't responded. So I think, like Jeremy said, so like outreach will still continue, but we think this is a good pretty comprehensive look, first look at organizations that probably had something to share and time to share and talk about it.
Maybe I'll add another little piece. So there was initially a list of 62 partners or stakeholders, and throughout like the kind of beginning of the outreach, there were other organizations that were identified through those conversations. And some of those were like the big federal agencies like USGS, their Nevada Water Science Center, and I think that as this kind of goes on, that more of those agencies or organizations kind of emerge. So.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And just want to echo the comments made about the great work on this and how exciting it is to see the work and the data coming together. So kudos to the team.
It's been great. I really enjoyed it. So.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Peter, just to maybe get at this a little more, I think it's a great kind of question to ask as we move forward through the plan, especially with reaching out or back out to agencies we already reached out to. I think it's something that we can think about internally at Team RPA, talk about with our team at Cardno, as well as maybe bring to our Natural Resource Plan Steering Committee to help them decide, are there other organizations that we really want to get to for this round of data gathering, and see if we can hit them up again as a priority. And then I think for future efforts, maybe going forward through the plan, we can start to kind of make a list of maybe agencies that we didn't hit up this time, but for the future, once we get this document rolling and the portal up and going, that maybe want to think about, okay, now we can start reaching out to more organizations. Who are they? What are our priorities there to continue to gather data?
Thanks. Commissioners, any additional questions? I think, again, just echoing what everybody's saying, it's great work. So far, we've got, everything we've seen so far has been wonderful. I think as it keeps coming together, it's going to be that much better for us to look at and even have even more refined questions. The more stuff we have, the more questions we're going to be asking. So just be ready for that. I'm looking at you. Okay. If there's no other questions, thank you guys very much. I don't think we have to take any action on this. This is just an update for us, correct? Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Next on the agenda is reports. We'll start with any members' reports. Seeing none. Okay, move on to director's reports. Director Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Smith for the record. Next RPC meeting will be next month here in this chamber or on Zoom. That'll be on April 28th. And then with regard to just sort of talking about this natural resource plan in a little more detail, I mean, so far what we've seen is data organization slides. We've been talking to people. We know how many people we talked to, who they were, what sector they come from, that sort of thing. But when we bring you the next update, it's our sincere hope that we'll be able to provide some substantive analysis information around the actual topics themselves. How much information did we get about water quality? What do we have about, cultural resource? How do the numbers stack up in that way? And as we go through, as Nate mentioned, the subcommittee meetings, what the implications, right, for each of these kind of topic areas. The way it's kind of organized, we've changed the nomenclature a bit, but it's 6 categories, as we've seen, dinosaur, mammoth being the switch out on one of them. But within that, there's various topic areas. And as you saw from Patricia's slide, and we showed in the matrix last month, you could probably bin them in a multiple different ways, right? But we're going to choose what we think is the strongest relationship and organize them that way, and basically start detailing each topic, right, within the categories, a narrative description of the lay of the land, if you will, in our region, and as well as how it relates to land use planning and ultimately policy. So that's kind of the direction we're heading to. So I hope that the next update might not be next month, but at some subsequent meeting, we'll have another update, and that's what it will be targeting to talk about. That's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeremy. Legal counsel, Jessica, good evening.
Nothing part. Good
Nothing
evening.
to-
Thank you.
That was easy, thank you. Okay. Item number 9, request for future agenda items. Commissioners, do we have any requests? Doesn't appear so. Okay. Item 10, public comment. Have we received any public comment this evening?
We have not.
Okay, then I will close public comment. Any written correspondence?
No.
You guys are full of quick answers for me tonight. I appreciate that. All right, now the big one. We don't have Commissioner Chesney here tonight, so I'm not sure how we're going to handle this last agenda item, but I will.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. I have a motion for adjournment. Looking for a second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, you guys.